And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon, live from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Mr. Randy Wang's downstairs.
John, I've got an update for you on a story involving California Attorney General
Bonta.
About a year ago,
Bonta
made a huge allegation that several members of LA County Probation, the probation officers at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, were hosting gladiator-style boy fights and betting on the inmates beating each other up. Well, Bob Bonta has now had the charges dropped on over half of those cases because it was nonsense.
He really is the absolute worst. How is he not in prison yet?
Yet is the important word there. Some of these investigations take a very, very, very long time.
Bonta.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. And speaking of California's Attorney General Bob Bonta, here with an update on all of the hospice fraud going on in the San Fernando Valley, Mr. Randy Wang.
So we've now got a dueling banjos going on with Bill Essayli and Bob Bonta trying to outdo each other when it comes to busting fraud in the hospice world, defrauding Medi-Cal and Medicare. And you know what? I'm here for it. If this is how we get the state of California to take this seriously, and the federal government, which for a long time wasn't taking this seriously, to take this seriously, let's go for it. Alex Michelson of CNN, the story is, sat down with both Bill Essayli and Bobby
Bonta
to talk about their efforts to take down all the hospice fraud going on, specifically on that one street in Van Nuys
that has gained national attention thanks to Nick Shirley and CBS News.
For more, here is Alex Michelson and CNN.
This video shows police executing a search warrant in a massive Medicare fraud investigation.
Yep, go ahead.
This body-worn camera footage provided by California's Department of Justice.
Police search warrant!
President Donald Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom and their allies are fighting over who's better at fighting Medicare fraud in California.
Well, it's certainly not Gavin Newsom and Bob Bonta.
Going to review every single hospice in California.
Both sides holding dueling LA press conferences just days apart.
A massive hospice fraud bust.
On the left, California Attorney General Rob Bonta.
Alex, are you setting this up like a cage match?
Well, if they're going to talk like pro wrestlers, you should really involve Katie Porter.
Oh, yeah.
On the left, California Attorney General Rob Bonta, originally appointed to the job by Newsom.
And what were his qualifications?
He was the assemblyman from Oakland, and his benefactors were the Dong family.
Those were his qualifications.
What you're witnessing right now is a seismic shift.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Oz is in this story, too.
Well, he was one of the first ones to highlight it.
Yeah, but he was trying to blame it all on the Armenians.
But aren't some of them involved in this?
But there are plenty of different people from different races and ethnicities that are defrauding the government.
Well, he's Turkish, so what do you expect?
There's a big beef that's been going on between those two countries for a very long time.
On the right, Dr. Mehmet Oz, Trump's pick to run.
Isn't it Armenian Genocide Remembrance Month or something?
Could be.
I think it is.
On the right, Dr. Mehmet Oz, Trump's pick to run the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and First Assistant U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli.
We're providing the oversight that's been missing from California for a very long time.
Trump's team highlighting this recent early morning raid that resulted in 8 arrests in 9 different healthcare fraud investigations.
California DOJ has been going after healthcare fraud since 1979. For decades.
Yeah, but when you were just interviewed by Adam Yamaguchi of CBS News, you were like, yeah, we need to do more. We need to do better.
And then what did Newsom do? He attacked the people who were highlighting the fraud instead of going after the people who were committing the fraud.
For decades, Trump is late to the party.
Bonta says his office uncovered a $267 million fraud scheme involving 21 suspects from 14 fraudulent hospice companies. Bonta calls it the largest fraud prosecution in California history. He explained to...
I mean, that's great, but also we allowed all of that fraud to happen right under our nose. And sure, you can say, well, yeah, these criminals just outsmarted us. But when you remember this scheme, the one that Bonta talked about and how great it was that we busted this up, they were taking Social Security numbers that they stole from the dark web of people that did not live in the state of California and having those numbers apply for Medi-Cal and getting approved. So who exactly is to blame for allowing all of these not real people to be getting benefits that were then billed to federal Medicare?
And it went on for years and years and years and years. And instead of focusing on that, Bob Bonta decided to go after the card rooms because that's what his benefactors at the Indian casinos wanted him to do. And, of course, he sued the Trump administration a million times because that's what gets him on cable news.
Bob Bonta.
Of course, you also have the situation uncovered by CBS News locally with Ross Palumbo of all of the fraudulent businesses, some of them being hospice businesses, but all kinds of other businesses that are just automatically getting business licenses from Shirley Weber's office, and she doesn't want to talk about that. It's impossible to get anything done in this state the right way, but if you are operating a criminal enterprise, it is so easy for you to operate in the state of California, and there's something real wrong with that.
And Shirley Weber almost gets offended when she's asked about giving all of these business licenses to all of these fraudulent institutions. She goes, "It's not my job to verify the information that they provide. I just have to give them the license."
I mean, what do we know about the ghost student scandals in California community colleges? People can't book themselves for classes because the classes are full because you have robots stealing identities, getting federal and state loans, and enrolling in these classes even though they're not real people.
He explained to us how the alleged scheme works.
This was a group that identified a number of out-of-state individuals on the dark web and then registered them in covered California under Medi-Cal.
And how is it that easy to do that?
Because the state of California allows it to happen because they don't prioritize cracking down on fraud.
And, you know, the covered California thing has been a big problem for a long time. If you want to know one of the reasons there are so many addicts on the streets, it's because for a very long time, this is the scheme that unscrupulous rehab facilities were doing. They would air ads in places like Ohio and Wisconsin that if you're struggling with addiction, come to California and get treatment in Malibu and you'll get to pet a horse. And the way that our laws were constructed when it comes to Medi-Cal is even if you did not live in the state, the second you step on California soil, you qualify for Medi-Cal, which included 30 days of rehab. So they'd bill for the 30 days of rehab, and then they'd kick you out on the street with no return ticket home.
What could go wrong?
And registered them as residents to be eligible, and then started billing millions of dollars in hospice care that was never actually provided. There was no doctor involved, no care was actually provided.
How widespread is this problem?
Hospice fraud is a significant problem. It's not just in California, but there is a sort of locus of activity in LA County.
It's not just in LA County, it's in one building in the San Fernando Valley.
In Van Nuys.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. Crime does have certain places where there are hot spots, but I do want to make clear that.
Well, and you have a situation where the city of Los Angeles does not shut down illegally operating businesses, does not shut down criminal organizations. How many times have we heard that they can't shut down the illegal pot stores that don't even have a license? So now they want you to vote on a ballot measure to let them send a tax bill to those criminal organizations.
And if you're a crook and you know where there's one location where no one's minding the store, why don't you go there?
Certain places where there are hot spots, but I do want to make clear that there's hospice fraud throughout the country. Trump himself is focused on Texas and Ohio and Georgia as places for hospice fraud.
Yet California's getting a lot of attention.
We are.
What do you think that's about? What do you think's driving that?
I think it's political. I think it's partisan. I think it's political weaponization.
I mean, do you think this is driven by the...
Shouldn't we all be on the same team of, hey, these criminals are bad and we should all be going after them?
Think about what he just said there. He's not disputing that this fraud is going on. He's not disputing that it's a real problem, particularly in Los Angeles County. He's not disputing that they're stealing millions of dollars from taxpayers. He's saying, because you're pointing it out, you're the problem. You're the partisan, and you're looking to score political points, as opposed to, yeah, we're going to take help from wherever it comes, and we're going to shut this down.
Bob Bonta.
Political weaponization.
I mean, do you think this is driven by the fact that Gavin Newsom is likely running for president of the United States, and this is a way to attack a potential Democratic nominee?
It could be part of it. It could be part of it. I mean, the attacks on the governor have escalated and increased.
It's good to see you.
Essayli joined us last week on The Story Is to talk about prosecuting fraud cases on behalf of the federal government.
For critics who say this is a cynical attempt to highlight Gavin Newsom in a negative way when he's about to run for president, you say...
Fraud is the number one issue for taxpayers who pay taxes every day. We're going to go after fraud wherever it is, if that's a blue state or a red state.
Governor Newsom.
And for a long time, the U.S. Attorney's Office was not going after stuff like this.
So what is the implication here? Because Newsom's running for president, we're just supposed to ignore it so we don't make him look bad?
It's such a stupid fight.
Governor Newsom's press team says Medicare is run by the federal government. On X.
Yes, but the states administer it, and it was the state that allowed the criminals to enroll people in covered California without any knowledge that they were in covered California.
The federal government doesn't vet business licenses. The state does. Specifically in California, the Secretary of State does. And she has acknowledged that it's not her job to vet the fraud. Well, okay, if it's not her job to vet the fraud, and she, by the way, also a Newsom appointee, then the state needs to figure out who does need to vet the fraud. Because to my eye, no one's doing it.
On X, they posted, quote, glad the federal government is finally stepping up to do their part.
The federal government is the piggy bank. We're the money. The programs are administered through the state. So every single one of these fraudulent hospices, they have to be licensed by the state of California. They're responsible for overseeing the licenses. They're responsible for regulating doctors and nurses.
What do you say to that?
I don't know what his insight is onto the licensing process. And
you might want to go next door and ask Shirley.
It's so crazy that none of them are willing to criticize her. Like, why is she bulletproof? She's an old lady. She's in this office. She's going to term out, and then her career is going to be over. It's not like she's going to be governor. It's not like she's going to be president. Yet they're all afraid to criticize her.
Well, and this isn't something that just started with her. She's been in this job for a while, but Alex Padilla had this job, and there were plenty of these fraudulent businesses that got licenses under his watch.
That's true.
What do you say to that?
I don't know what his insight is onto the licensing process. And unfortunately, he's very critical of California in many ways, and very partisan, unfortunately, as well. But
okay.
Here, I'm pointing out a flaw in your system, and no, that's partisan.
But you notice he sidestepped criticizing Weber. He's criticizing Essayli because he believes he has political motivations. Okay, let's just say that he does have political motivations. That doesn't mean what he's saying isn't true. What he's saying is 100% true, and it's a problem in California. And if you just go in and you just enforce the law on the hospices because you've been embarrassed publicly, and that's going to damage Newsom's presidential aspirations, okay, but you're not fixing it for the next one. Because if she's going to continue to give business licenses to fraudsters, it's going to be some other industry the next time.
On the issue of licensing, there's a moratorium on any new licenses that's existed since 2022. It goes till 2027, so it's a 5-year moratorium.
That is true, and that's one thing that Gavin's press office has put out over and over and over again. But what we're talking about here is all of the existing ones that were already flagged by the California State Auditor as having all the possible check marks for being a fraudulent business that we weren't going after, including several in that one building in Van Nuys.
No more.
And you want to talk about partisan, the story into the fake businesses and the licenses that Shirley Weber's not paying attention to, that's CBS LA, not necessarily a partisan outlet.
Nope.
No more new licenses for any hospice companies during that period.
Because there was so much fraud, they said we got to stop the licenses.
Oh yeah, there was a state audit. There was legislative attention to this. Policymakers, leaders, the leaders of.
We've known this has been a huge problem for a long time.
I love the fact that of all of the departments in the state of California that don't perform, the California State Auditor's Office seems to do a pretty good job, but everyone just ignores them. They take all of this useful information that would help us track down the waste, fraud, and abuse, and they just throw it in the trash can.
In 2019, before COVID, there was a California state audit saying that our unemployment system is ripe for fraud and we need to do something about it. And, well, we didn't.
You know, the California Department of Health, which issues the licenses, you know, the governor, my team, like, yes, flags were raised.
And the fact that clearly since at least 2022, you've known this was a big problem, if not before then, and that it's still such a big problem that LA County is still the hotbed of all this, that all this is still going on. In some ways, is that a failure of the state or the federal government, everybody, to regulate this?
I don't think it's a failure. I think it.
Of course not, because we're a one-party state and we don't criticize anything that goes on here.
Bob Bonta.
I don't think it's a failure. I think it's a sign of the scope and scale of the problem.
Bonta and Essayli have been going back and forth publicly on social media.
I think the state should work with the federal government and not criticize us.
It's like frustrating to have all this partisan conversation and back and forth on an issue that should be bipartisan and, by the way, screws over every taxpayer.
I think that the injection of partisanship is not good. It's not healthy. It's not productive. I don't think it.
You're playing in it.
He is looking to politically benefit from it by positioning himself as the attorney general that's a leader in the resistance.
I don't think it's a two sides thing, though. I think the injection of the partisanship comes largely from Trump and Oz, and unfortunately, First Assistant Essayli does a lot of it himself, and it's unfortunate.
There you go. That is the report with Alex Michelson, Bill Essayli, and Bobby.
Bob Bonta.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
Like, let's say you didn't get to hear us covering Matthew Seedorf's interview with Stephen Klubeck about Eric Swalwell.
No!
You got to search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You could download all the episodes. Do a Google on the YouTube. Get the KABC app or the KSFO app. Even get that KMJ Now app, because we're on that station Saturdays at noon. So many different ways to listen to what we do here from noon to 3 every single day. And download all the podcasts so you can listen to them whenever you want. So you can listen to this Stephen Klubeck gem over and over and over again.
Don't bust the trust.
1-800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Earlier in the program, we played the sound for you of a press conference that was delivered earlier today in Beverly Hills involving a woman who claims that former Congressman Eric Swalwell brutally raped her right here in California. She says he slipped her some kind of Mickey, which caused her to pass out. She passed out in his hotel room. He strangled her and raped her, and she thought she was going to die. And then she went and she filed a police report after the press conference over at the West Hollywood Sheriff's Station. But she wasn't the only accuser who came out today and said that Eric Swalwell behaved inappropriately with her.
Multiple accusers went on camera on CBS Mornings to talk about their dealings with Eric Swalwell. For more, here is CBS Mornings, which is what they call that morning show now.
At our exclusive CBS News interview with two women who say Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell sexually harassed them. They told Nancy Cordes why they finally decided to go public. Swalwell denies allegations of sexual misconduct, but he did suspend his campaign for governor on Sunday and then announced he's going to resign from Congress. Nancy Cordes joined.
Which he did, but you know what he did an hour after he fully resigned from Congress? He sent another statement by the third law firm to represent him in about 6 months saying that this is all a hit job and I'm going after it.
He's such a strange guy.
Yeah.
Nancy Cordes joins us now from Washington. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning to you, Nora. This is the first time that Swalwell's accusers have been willing to go on camera, and they told us it wasn't an easy.
There is strength in numbers, and a lot of these women felt like they were the only one this happened to, that who would believe them. But when you have so many women who did not know each other, all with so many similar stories, they're now feeling emboldened enough to go on camera to reveal their names, and good for them.
One of the things that benefited Eric Swalwell was the lack of an information flow among the victims. But now, because the dam is broke, they're all in connection with one another.
On camera, and they told us it wasn't an easy decision, but that they've been shocked to discover how many women had stories about Swalwell that were apparently just like theirs.
I didn't tell anybody for years, out of fear.
What were you afraid of?
Well, at first I thought I was all alone.
Annika Albrecht was still in college when she says she got what she thought was a big break. California Congressman Eric Swalwell offering to stay in touch after meeting with her student group in Washington, D.C.
He's so creepy.
And you know he's the kind of guy who would invite all the students over to the office so he could take his pick of the litter and groom them to be someone that he could assault.
He offered to mentor me.
Wow.
That was as someone who knew virtually nothing about politics at the time, or no one. That was just an incredibly generous offer that I felt very lucky to have.
She says Swalwell created a group chat with all the students and then added her as a friend on the messaging app Snapchat.
Here we go again.
That's where you can take things after hours.
And so I asked the other people that were in the meeting, did he add them? And they said no.
Were they all men?
Yes.
Well,
So
it wasn't
there's one
Barney
girl
Frank
in this-
who was hoping to mentor her.
There's only one girl in this college group that goes to Swalwell's office. He opens a text thread with all of them, but only she gets the Snapchats.
She won the golden ticket.
I was the only woman in the meeting.
She says Swalwell, who was then in his late 30s, started out talking politics, but his messages soon turned flirtatious.
Ultimately,
So disgusting.
How many girls do you think he did this to?
Just in what we've heard in the last 7 days, we're definitely going to be hitting the double digits.
Because we're just hearing from the ones where it escalated and something bad happened. But for every girl where it escalated and something bad happened, I'm sure there were many more who just shut it down because they saw red flags.
And he's not just some single horn dog congressman. The entire time all of these are going on, he's got a wife at home in Maryland and small children.
Ultimately, it reached a point where he invited me to a hotel to meet him. It was very clear what the connotation was. At that point, I completely stopped responding.
She ghosted him. Good for her.
Whenever a guy says, meet me at my hotel room, that's never a good sign.
Nope.
What I keep thinking back to is how lucky I am that I didn't go to that hotel.
Alisa Marco says she had a similar experience in 2021. She sent Swalwell a supportive message on Twitter, and to her surprise, he messaged right back.
He slid into her DMs.
And it sounds like it didn't take long.
I was so excited. I was a low-level staffer who had no real political background, and he was this established figure in Democratic politics.
They began to text, but she says he soon asked.
I like of all the things, established figure. What is Swalwell actually accomplished as a member of Congress?
Well, if you're a regular cable news watcher, he's on all the relevant committees. He's on the Intel Committee, so he was one of the leading voices that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. He was on the Impeachment Committee. He was on the Judiciary Committee. He was a regular guest on all of those programs. So even though he wasn't doing anything for the state of California, if you're a Democratic partisan and you hate Donald Trump, he was one of the faces of the resistance.
It's such a weird kind of celebrity.
They began to text, but she says he soon asked if she too was on Snapchat.
Red flag.
There you go.
Where messages and photos automatically get deleted after they're viewed.
I mean, the really smart people know how to screenshot it, and it's very possible one of those is coming out someday soon.
How did the tenor of his conversation change?
It started out as professional and platonic, and then slowly they became more and more explicit, asking me what I was wearing. Then one night he was on a trip and he was laying in his hotel room bed, and then he sent me a photo of his penis.
No!
There you go. Send in the Richard pics and not Nixon.
Samarco showed us text messages she sent to friends at the time about Swalwell's alleged advances.
And this is something that I don't think anyone in our audience needs to hear, but I'm going to say it. If you are somebody that likes to do this, send the unsolicited picture, just so you know, they all show their friends and they all tell their friends and they all make fun of you.
And I'm sure he thought he was giving her a gift, giving her a thrill, doing something nice for her by sending her that picture unsolicited.
He's so disgusting.
In one, she wrote, "He's snapping me right now, asking when he can see me." But beyond that, both women said little for years as they built careers as Democratic campaign strategists.
This is just the rite of passage, apparently, is to get hit on by Swalwell.
Just
I was
checking the
terrified
boxes.
that I was terrified that if I spoke out against him, then people would think that I was a loose cannon, that I couldn't be trusted, that maybe I'm making it up.
It's wild, too, because this is all after the Me Too reckoning, and specifically regulations they had in Congress that would allow staffers to speak out, and none of that still mattered.
No, because they really didn't change the rules in any significant way to prevent something like this from happening. The Swalwells are going to Swalwell, and there's really nothing you can do about it outside of the voters being aware that this person is of low moral character and voting them out of office. If and when that doesn't happen, then the Eric Swalwells of the world will continue to behave like this.
That was until Swalwell decided to run for governor of California.
I'm Eric Swalwell, and it's this simple.
And quickly moved to the top of the pack.
The idea that this man who has...
How weak is this field that this guy became the front runner on the Democrat side?
By the way, it shows you how delusional he was to run for governor. When you've been behaving like this for years and years and years, and you know you left this wake of destruction of victims and girls who are really offended at how you treated them, and you think that you're just going to go ahead and waltz all the way to Sacramento without any of it coming back to haunt you. This guy was totally delusional. And the scary part is, had he not been delusional, he probably would have been able to be a member of Congress from California until he died in office in his 90s.
The idea that this man who has already abused his power would be given even more power and could potentially harm even more women.
You get a lot more staffers when you're governor.
You do.
Made my whole body sick.
So 2 weeks ago...
Mine too.
So 2 weeks ago, Albrecht reached out to her good friend Cheyenne Hunt, a Democratic content creator, and asked her to post a video about the rumors that have dogged Swalwell for years.
And this is how much has happened since then. John, that was a week ago. Doesn't that feel like a month ago?
It feels like forever ago.
The Democratic candidate currently leading in the California governor's race has a known history of being predatory towards women.
I could never have guessed where it would lead us.
Where did it lead?
I was immediately slammed with DMs from other women who said, I have a story to tell. And that was when I realized that this was a lot bigger than I think any of us knew.
It's almost like that situation, and we've all been there, where you're at a friend's party and you're really over it, but everyone's afraid to be the first person to leave the party. But as soon as somebody finally does it and you realize it's okay, everyone heads for that exit.
Well, what's the saying? There's strength in numbers.
Swalwell has acknowledged what he called mistakes of judgment, but denied.
It's a little more than that, buddy.
That's the nice way of putting it.
But denied all allegations of sexual misconduct.
They have never happened, and I will fight them with everything that I have.
And yet on...
That's the video that he taped at Klubeck's house.
No! Before Klubeck turned on him.
Well, you know what he did.
Don't bust the trust.
I wish Klubeck would have stayed in. I want to cover him.
He seems like an interesting guy.
And yet on Sunday, he suspended his bid for governor. And yesterday announced his plan to resign from Congress.
Is that just...
Which this ran early this morning. As of 12:30, he officially did resign from Congress. As did Tony Gonzalez. And Tony Gonzalez, the Republican congressman from Texas, he had some crazy affair with his staffer, ruined her life, and she set herself on fire.
And there are two more members of Congress who might get kicked out sometime this week or next week.
Is that justice in your view?
I think we just prevented another 30 to 40 years.
One thing that we have learned, whether it is Swalwell, Gonzalez, or even to a smaller extent, Porter,
Get out of my shop.
Congressional staffers get treated like absolute garbage.
They really do.
Is that justice in your view?
I think we just prevented another 30 to 40 years potentially of him harming people if he were to stay in Congress.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think we have served justice for his future victims. Wow. That won't exist anymore.
We reached out to Swalwell multiple times to ask about these specific allegations, and we did not hear back. In videos, though, he has accused the women of teaming up with MAGA Republicans or even a rival campaign. The women we spoke to say that is simply not true. In fact, Ali and Annika said...
It seems that all of this is pretty organic. And the thing that they didn't even realize when the first woman that just had the Snapchat story told her friend to put out that video was how many women over the years, some going all the way back to the mid-2010s, had stories about him.
The only ones that I've seen who seem to be buying into that are the dingbats on The View who think this is all Donald Trump's fault.
The women we spoke to say that is simply not true. In fact, Allie and Annika said they didn't even know each other before they came forward. It's pretty remarkable what they accomplished just in the past 14 days, you guys.
I'll say, Nancy, it's been big change in Eric Swalwell's life. Thank you so much.
Great insight, Gail. Do you think she was even listening to the story?
No. Nope.
I'll say, Nancy, it's been big change in Eric Swalwell's life. Thank you so much.
That's one way to put it.
She's made a career out of being Oprah's best friend.
Yep.
All right, more power to her. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Chris writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Hi, guys. Hopefully you both are enjoying the land of enchantment. John, you always talk about how California Democrats are nothing but trouble for the National Democratic Party. I always get frustrated about the double standard in the California media, but their negligence and willful ignorance actually helps the Republicans. Harris is VP, Baccaria at HHS, Mayorkas at HS, and of course, give them the full-face Garcetti in India. The Democratic Party sells their soul for California money, but iron sharpens iron. These California Dems are ill-prepared because they're never vetted, and that makes me think Gavin is in big trouble.
I think you're right. And if you look at Kamala Harris and how her campaign went down in flames, part of what her problem was that she took some of the wackadoodle positions that she took, which is very common in this state, which is a deep blue state, but you could never get away with in a place like Michigan or Pennsylvania or Arizona or Nevada. But here, the system requires you. Remember when she said that she wanted to defund ICE and she wanted to take the money to pay for sex change operations for prisoners and illegal aliens? And Trump just used that against her in ad after ad after ad. And it became a real problem for her. And then you look at Swalwell and you look at his complete lack of ethics, and that ended up doing him in. You combine the two of them, and what you have is Gavin Newsom. You have someone who's taken wackadoodle positions, who has no ethics at all. And if I were a Democratic primary voter, I'd say, okay, we've been there, done that. I know how that movie ends. I'm not interested in doing that again. Let's go to Dave in Whittier. Dave, hello.
Isn't it interesting that Mr. Rob Bonta, the head chief of fraudsterism, the number one fraudster, he's trying to piggyback on Nick Shirley exposing the fraud, but yet Bonta's the biggest fraudster in the world, promoting and standing on sanctuary city policy, which I hope – I saw something on Facebook saying that Congress is passing a law to now making it able to go after people like Bonta and officials who aid and abet and go against ICE and obstruct. So I hope that's the case. But Bonta's the biggest fraudster, and Michael Gates is the right choice for Attorney General, folks. Get that guy in.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Roger in Upland. Roger, you have about 45 seconds. Go.
I'm wondering why nobody has thought about the fact that Swalwell was shacked up with Fang Fang, a known Chinese spy, and now all of this information is coming forward about all the other things that he did, which would be great information to blackmail him with. And spying, that's treason. That's the kind of thing they put you in jail for the rest of your life for.
Yeah, he seemed to skate with all the Fang Fang allegations, but the rape allegations, he's not going to be able to escape from. He's in big trouble. All right. Thank you for the call, sir. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show.